For every second that Kurapika has the Scarlet Eyes active, he sacrifices an hour of his life. So how much time has he actually lost? Let's talk about it. Now, we've talked about this once before in relation to the time Kurapika passed out from exhaustion during the Succession War. And the entire time he was asleep, he had the Scarlet Eyes active, which means Emperor time was on for almost 12 hours straight, which means Kurapika traded almost 5 years of his life for that. So right off the bat, we're at 5 years. And that time is definitely the single greatest instance of time lost, but Kurapika has used the Scarlet Eyes many other times in this series, right? So how much time are we talking about total? And let's just give our best guess here. So first, let's talk about time spent training with the red eyes on, right? And I don't think there would be too much here because Kurapika knows about this 1 second to 1 hour ratio, and he's not just going to waste that, right? But I would say we could give him maybe a couple hours cumulative total of just like practicing with the red eyes on. And again, 1 second equals 1 hour. So 1 hour in Emperor time is roughly 150 days of his life lost. So let's call it maybe about a year lost to training. Next, let's take a look at the instances during the Yorknew arc, starting with the fight with Uvo. And really, this fight wasn't that long. It's kind of hard to say exactly, but I feel like we could chalk this up to maybe 30-ish minutes, which would be about 75 days. Then obviously, we've got all of the events that went down with Crollo and Pakunoda, and obviously, Kurapika was using Emperor time on this night, but I'll say that it wouldn't have been a continuous use throughout the entire night because he would have only had to activate them during the high stakes crucial moments, right? I.e. capturing Crollo and when he was using Judgment Chain on Crollo and Pakunoda, because we know he must use the Scarlet Eyes in order to use Judgment Chain. But he doesn't have to use the Scarlet Eyes to use all of his chains, and we'll talk more about that in a second. But so considering the events of this night, I think we could maybe generously say the eyes were on for maybe 2 or 3 hours, and we can just call it 3 to be safe. So that would be like 450 days. Then after Yorknew, we know that Kurapika tracked down and retrieved the majority of his clan members' eyes. And I think it's safe to say that he would have used Emperor time to help him do that. But what's important is we know that he didn't have to kill anybody to get these. So he primarily did this through diplomatic means. So I think that can tell us that he probably wasn't out here using Emperor time fighting a bunch of people 24/7, right? So cumulatively, let's say he spent another 4 hours total in Emperor time, like, you know, during negotiations or whatever the case may be. And that means it would be another 600 days. And then the only other big instance we know about is right before the Succession War when Kurapika joins the Zodiacs and performs the long-distance lie detection on all of them with the dowsing chain, something he has to be in Emperor time to do. If he's there in person, he doesn't need Emperor time, but since he was doing it through a computer, he did. And so I think the time it takes to conduct all of those interviews and watch all of that video, let's call it another 3 hours or another 450 days. So those are all the big moments we know about, but undoubtedly there would have been small moments here and there where he probably needed to use them for whatever reason. So let's chalk on an extra hour just for miscellaneous. So another 150 days. All right, so if we add that up, starting with time spent training all the way through his very expensive nap in the Succession War, then we are sitting at almost 10 years of his life sacrificed. So already a decade shaved off his lifespan, and he's nowhere near done using Emperor time. I mean, he's about to have to use Emperor time 24/7 in the Succession War with the way things are heating up right now. Like, there's no end in sight for him. He has to deal with everything going on, and we'll keep this spoiler free. Then he has to fight Prince Saridnik, presumably. That's going to be a big ol' use. And even if he makes it through all of that, he then may be stepping foot on the Dark Continent where he's going to have to use it, right? And then any and every other adventure beyond that. So Kurapika is probably looking at shaving decades off of his life before it's all said and done. Anyways, that's my 2 cents, y'all, based on some rough guesstimates of when I think Kurapika would have used the Scarlet Eyes. But I would love to hear y'all's thoughts in the comments and how much of his life you think he's shaved away already. But I want to give a huge shout out to Morgan who inspired this video, and y'all can pause to read the entire thing. But I already addressed most of this, but there is one other thing I want to tackle really quick, and that is on the distinction of did Kurapika have to use the Scarlet Eyes during that entire Crollo night? And no, he didn't. So while there are some abilities abilities that Kurapika must be an Emperor Time to use, like Judgment Chain and Stealth Dolphin. That's not the case for all of them, and it's not the case for Chain Jail. Now, Kurapika was probably using Emperor Time when he chain jailed Crollo, but that doesn't mean he had to maintain it thereafter. As you can see in the car here, Crollo is chain jailed and Kurapika's eyes are not active. And we know this because he then pisses Kurapika off and they activate. So he's not like wearing the contacts in this scene. But we know that he probably was using Emperor Time when he chain jailed Crollo, but then he could turn it off and it wasn't going to deactivate the chain jail or anything. So again, he just would have been turning it on and off that night as he needed to. So like when he was using Judgment Chain. And also, he doesn't have to keep Emperor Time on to maintain Judgment Chain, because you got to remember that he Judgment Chained himself in order to empower Chain Jail, and then he Judgment Chained Crollo for over a year with, removing his Nin. So Kurapika didn't have to be in Emperor Time that whole time or anything. The only ability that he must keep Emperor Time on to maintain the entire time is Stealth Dolphin, and that's what led to the expensive nap.